Hola, compañeros. It's your old pal, El Jefe Waspinator, and welcome back to Total Party Skills. Now, as you may have heard, Argentina had a little bit of an election, so I thought it'd be fun to revisit Rift's Argentina. I had covered it earlier in a series describing all of Rift's South America, but, this is just kind of a recap of an easily overlooked Rift setting. In the time period in which Rifts is set, Argentina, like most countries of the modern day, doesn't really exist anymore. It's a region that covers a good chunk of the southern half of South America. In fact, it covers a lot of the same environmental regions that the United States has, where it dips its toe a little bit into the jungle and dips its head a little bit into subarctic territories. In the Rift's time period, it's known collectively as the Silver River Republics, a series of minor kingdoms and nations that have mutual ties of geography and culture. Thanks to the contours of the South American continent, most of the damage released by the cataclysm hit places like Brazil, Venezuela, and Colombia much harder than the interior lands of Argentina. This makes nations like Cordoba and Santiago among the larger, human-controlled, high-tech civilizations that still remain on the planet. However, since the Silver River Republics are buried at the back of Rift's South America too, much like in real life, Argentina is easily overlooked as a good setting for player characters. Cordoba is arguably the largest and most powerful of these four republics. It is a nation of human supremacists, much like the Coalition, and is on par technologically with Coalition states such as Ironheart. They're able to produce cybernetics, MOM conversions, and glitter boys, as well as other types of robot vehicles and high-tech weapons. Their major political rival to their north is Santiago, which controls the northernmost parts of old Argentina, as well as the coastal regions of the southernmost tip of Brazil around Rio Grande. It's more comparable to Northern Gun in terms of head society. It's human-dominated, but not quite as heavily supremacist as Cordoba is. They are slightly more tolerant towards DBs and magic users, although they are hardly an integrated society like you would find in Laszlo or Tolkien. Cordoba has designs on taking over Santiago, but thankfully, for both nations, they are surrounded by various threats that have kept them from coming to full blows. The Archon aliens of the Andes Mountains can be found to the west of both Santiago and Cordoba, and south of Cordoba, you have the nation of Achilles. Achilles is a mutant animal society that emerged from Project Achilles, a rival to the Lone Star Project in North America. Now, whereas the Lone Star Project in North America has primarily been resurrected to produce dog boys for the Coalition, as well as a few minor experiments with some other mutant animals that haven't seen mass production, Achilles was far more experimental, has a broader variety of animal availabilities for player characters, and in many ways is kind of more like something you would expect to see in an After the Bomb setting. South of Achilles, you have New Babylon. New Babylon was founded by a high-tech race of DBs who look like large stone men. Their only connection to Babylon is that physically they kind of vaguely resemble the sort of statues you find in ancient Mesopotamia. There's also a variety of small minor holdings, minor kingdoms, and there's also the Larhold barbarians to the south, another mutual enemy that keeps the Big Four from committing fully to an outright assault on each other's neighbors. The Silver River Republics provide enough variability between societies and available enemies that you should be able to stitch together all sorts of character concepts and campaigns and adventures that are perfectly in line with the themes that Rifts tries to convey, while giving you a bit of a foreign flair and a few enemies that you don't normally encounter in North American campaign settings, while still allowing for most of the classic Rifts character classes to be available for players. There's people there who practice magic, there's people there who practice high-tech warfare. The main things that would be missing is that there's not really a presence of Psi Stalkers or Psi Hounds as the Coalition creates them. In fact, Achilles is where most of the cat races in that one city in El Dorado has come from. The Coalition does have diplomatic relations with Cordoba. They see each other as sympathetic powers. The Coalition in particular is paranoid about Achilles and potentially it being a destination for the Underground Railroad of escaped mutant animals that try to get out of Coalition territories. However, the extreme distance between the Coalition states of North America and of Cordoba prevents anything more than the most casual of diplomatic ties. In terms of outside threats, the Archons are arguably the most imminent, a race of alien invaders that had tried to return to Earth right as the cataclysm erupted, causing their fleet to crash land in South America. They were ancient enemies of the Incan gods, and thankfully most of their attention is focused against the Empire of the Sun in Peru and Chile. However, skirmishes with scouting parties of Archons on the eastern face of the Andes Mountains do occur. The Larhold barbarians are also a threat to neighboring, more peaceful species. However, their low-tech society dials them down in most people's threat level assessments. But they do have their own unique forms of magic, and they are not to be trifled with. There's a reason why they control much of southern Argentina. Independent ranching freeholds are quite common. In fact, there is a whole subculture of gaucho cowboys that has still managed to hold on in Argentina, maintaining their independence from, while also profiting off of, the presence of Cordoba and Santiago's large populations and their continuous need for food supply. Their long coastline along the Atlantic, however, would make them vulnerable to the occasional Splugorth raid or Haroon, as well as other factions and forces that are found in rifts under seas, such as cultists of the Lord of the Deep. All in all, it's a pretty solid rift setting. I'd give it a solid A-. Perhaps a little too repetitive of how things are in North America, but that can be both a good and a bad thing in terms of having to basically describe an entire new game setting to your players, as opposed to something that's easily translatable. It's just now in Spanish instead of English. And with the spirit of Viva Argentina in the air, now might be a good time to check out this book, South America 2, and maybe put together your own campaign set in the Silver River Republics. The nations of Santiago or Achilles likely being your best choices for a place for player characters to come from and start their adventuring in, as they're among the more sympathetic and least alien of the forces found here in Argentina. So that's it. Those are my thoughts on Rifts Argentina, the Silver River Republics. Go to Palladium Books, you can get yourself a copy of all the materials you need. It's one of those settings you can pretty much get by with just the main Rifts rulebook and South America 2. You would also want South America 1, Rifts Underseas, and Rifts Atlantis if you want to be a bit more thorough. But its relative geographical isolation does provide some advantages in that you don't necessarily have to account for everything else that's going on in the Rifts world at all times in order to be able to run a game there that'll satisfy people who are really heavy into accurate Rifts canon. And so that's it. Stay waspinated and all that good stuff. Oh, and as a side note, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that all Total Party Skills PDFs are currently on sale, slashed by at least 50% in most cases, on RPG. I'll leave a link in the description box below if you want to check any of those out while the titles are cheap, if you've been hesitating on getting one, to see what all the buzz is about with Total Party Skills. So until next time, arriba!